Previously on Beneath the Jade Sea. After surviving the train explosion, Catherine and Dane escaped into the jungle, unsure who was hunting them or why. But her father's journal pointed the way, and together they followed its cryptic trail into the wilds of Guangxi. Now, deep in unfamiliar territory, the stakes grow higher. An ambush at a forgotten ruin, a rickety bridge between survival and a fall into darkness. A river crossing into silence, and in the shadows of an ancient site, secrets stir. Secrets someone else is willing to kill for. The answers Catherine seeks lie buried in the past, but some things are meant to stay buried. Chapter 9. Catherine woke to birdsong and the soft hiss of cooling embers. The fire had burned low, little more than a nest of ash with the occasional orange flicker beneath a charred log. Her blouse clung to her back, damp with sweat and dew. The forest canopy let in narrow shafts of filtered morning light, and for a moment she simply lay there, still, quiet, grateful to have woken at all. Then she sat up. Dane was gone. The spot where he'd laid his coat was empty. No boots, no voice, no sound of footsteps in the underbrush. Panic climbed her spine like a chill. She scanned the camp. His pistol was gone. Nothing but a pile of leaves where he'd laid. She rose, brushing twigs from her trousers. Her satchel was still there. No sign of a struggle. No broken branches. Just absence. Her breath caught. He wouldn't have just left, would he? She looked toward the trail, half expecting to see him striding back through the trees. Nothing. He said he'd seen this kind of thing before. Sabotage, explosions, warnings meant for someone else. He said he didn't like working with people. Her jaw tightened. Maybe he thought she'd slow him down. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe she'd made a mistake trusting him at all. She turned in a slow circle, hands on her hips, fighting back the burn behind her eyes. Then a voice. "Don't take it personally." She spun. Dane stepped through the trees, hair damp, sleeves rolled, carrying a long leafy branch and two muddy roots, something like wild yams. "Wasn't planning to disappear," he said, nodding toward the camp. "Didn't want to wake you." Her fists unclenched slowly. "You could have left a note." He tilted his head. "In the dirt? With a stick?" She exhaled and sank back onto the log, brushing her hands through her hair. "You were gone." "I wasn't far," he smiled. "You took your gun." He sat across from her and started cutting the roots with a small folding knife. "Because I wasn't sure what I'd find." "And if you hadn't come back?" He looked up. For a long second, neither of them spoke. "I would have," he said simply. The silence stretched again, not tense this time, just long. Catherine crossed her arms. "I thought maybe you'd changed your mind." "About helping you?" "About all of it." He tossed a trimmed piece of root into the embers. "Too stubborn for that." She gave a dry smile. "So I've noticed." He broke a small branch and handed it to her. "Help me stir these. They'll burn otherwise." They sat in the quiet crackle of the fire, steam beginning to rise from the edges of the roots. Somewhere beyond the trees, a bird gave a long, lonely call. Catherine glanced over. "What happens next?" Dane leaned back on his palms. "We hike upriver. Maybe 2 days. If your father's sketch is right, there should be a stone marker by a bend. Something old. That's where we start. And if it's not there?" He shrugged. "Then we get creative." She looked at him, searching for any cracks in his calm. There were none. The quiet confidence was maddening and oddly comforting. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. "Enough." She poked at the roots with her stick. "You always like this? Just jump in? No hesitation?" No, just good at pretending. She glanced at him again and for the first time saw it. Beneath the stubble and the steady hands there was fatigue. He looked older this morning, not tired exactly, worn. She didn't say anything, she just nudged one of the roots closer to the coals and kept stirring. After a while, Dane spoke again. I know you thought I was gone. She didn't answer. I've walked away before. People have a way of getting hurt when they're close. She turned slightly, eyes meeting his. Maybe don't walk away this time. He held her gaze for a moment, then nodded once. The wind shifted through the trees, carrying the scent of earth and smoke and something older. Stone, maybe, or rain on dry leaves. The jungle waited, close and green and indifferent. Dane stood and offered her one of the roots. Eat up. You're gonna need it. She took it, still warm in her hands. Why? Because I think today's the easy part. Chapter 10. The trail narrowed to little more than a suggestion, half swallowed by vines, with only the occasional boot print left by whatever travelers had come before. Catherine followed Dane through the trees, brushing leaves from her face as the slope gradually tilted upward. The jungle grew thicker the higher they climbed, the air wet and heavy with the scent of moss and unseen flowers. By midday, even Dane had slowed. They paused at the crest of a ridge, where the earth leveled into a patch of slick red clay. Below, a narrow valley yawned open, shrouded in mist. In its center, a rise of stone jutted like a worn tooth, ancient, gray, half swallowed by the jungle. Catherine stopped, hand on her thigh, catching her breath. That's it. That has to be it. Dane followed her gaze, eyes narrowing. Matches the journal, doesn't it? She nodded, stepping forward. Yes, look, just there. The spiral, exactly where my father sketched it. He gave a short nod, scanning the perimeter. Then we're in the right place. They made their way down slowly, Dane checking for signs of movement, Catherine noting every broken wall and marker. By the time they reached the clearing, the ruins emerged fully, a wide circular platform ringed with cracked pillars and the remnants of tiled pathways, long since shattered and devoured by roots. It's older than I thought, she murmured, stepping carefully between two mossy stones. These tiles, Ming era at the latest, maybe older. Dane crouched near a stone that had toppled sideways and pointed. This pattern match your father's notes? Catherine knelt beside him, brushing dirt from the grooves. Exactly. This symbol. He thought it was a directional marker. Said the spiral had significance. The tip points towards... A sharp snap echoed from the trees above. Dane was on his feet instantly, pistol drawn. Catherine froze. That wasn't an animal. No. His voice dropped low. And it wasn't far. Another sound, softer this time. A boot sliding on stone. He motioned her toward the edge of the ruin, where a low retaining wall offered partial cover. She followed without argument, crouching low. I thought we'd lost them, she whispered. We did. He looked back over the platform. These aren't the same ones. Then who? A shout rang out in Mandarin. Dane's eyes flared. 3 men stepped from the trees. 2 with rifles, 1 with a machete. They were lean and mud-slick, dressed like local bandits. But there was discipline in the way they moved. Too coordinated. Too quiet until now. One of them called again, gesturing toward the platform. Catherine hissed. What's he saying? They found the marker. Dane glanced back toward the jungle, which means they're tracking the same lead we are. Catherine's heart dropped. They're after the journal's trail? Looks that way. She ducked lower. So what do we do? Back way out. Fast. They moved fast and low, circling around the base of the ruin until they reached a hidden trail that dropped down into a ravine. A narrow rope bridge stretched across the chasm, swaying with each breeze. It looked like it hadn't been used in decades. Catherine stopped short. "That's not going to hold us." "You got a better idea?" "No." Behind them, voices grew louder. He glanced at her. "You first." She looked at the missing planks, the frayed cords. "You're serious?" Dane pulled his revolver, keeping it trained back toward the ruins. "Go." She stepped onto the bridge. The wood groaned but held. Her breath came fast as she edged forward one plank at a time. Halfway across, a rifle cracked behind her. She yelped and crouched low. A shot splintered a plank to her left. Dane fired back twice, then ducked low and followed her onto the bridge. Catherine scrambled across the last stretch and fell to her knees on the far side. She turned, breath catching, just in time to see the top rope snap. Dane dropped low, grabbing the side rail as the bridge swung hard. "Dane!" He clung to the cord with one hand, his pistol dropping into the ravine below. She reached down, stretching her arm as far as it would go. "Take my hand!" He lunged. Their fingers brushed once, then caught. "Got you," she breathed. She pulled. His boots scrabbled for traction on the slope. The bridge swung wildly with the wind. Finally, with a grunt, he clambered over the edge and rolled beside her. They lay on the ground, gasping. He turned to her, mud streaked across his cheek, and managed a dry laugh. "Well," he said, "that was dramatic." Catherine didn't smile. She stared past him at the broken bridge, her heart still hammering. "They're looking for it too." Dane nodded. "Whatever your father's found, we're not the only ones chasing it." Chapter 11. They didn't stop moving. The path from the broken bridge wound through low hills and bramble-choked gullies. Dane kept them off the wider trails, cutting through bamboo thickets and looping back on their own footprints. Catherine's boots were soaked through before noon, her calves scratched and stinging, but she didn't complain. Not once. By late afternoon, the trees opened to a broad river, slow and brown with silt. It curved through the valley like a sleeping serpent, its banks cluttered with reeds and the occasional fishing shack on stilts. The mist had burned off, leaving a dull haze that made the water shimmer gold. Dane crouched behind a fallen tree and watched the far side. Catherine knelt beside him. "Think they followed us this far?" "No one's behind us, for now." He looked downstream. "But if they've got a boat, they'll try to cut us off." She scanned the river. "How do we cross?" He pointed to a low wooden raft tied beneath one of the nearby shacks. "We borrow that." She raised an eyebrow. "That doesn't look like it floats." He smirked. "Only one way to find out." They approached the shack quietly. An old woman sat near the front steps, dozing beneath a wide-brimmed straw hat, a fan limp in her hand. Dane motioned for Catherine to stay back and circled wide. When he returned, he looked mildly puzzled. "She didn't even ask what for," he said, untying the rope. "Just told me to bring it back before sundown." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "Did you try to pay her?" He shrugged. "Offered." She laughed. Told me I had an honest face. She smirked. "She might need glasses." Catherine climbed aboard carefully. The raft creaked and dipped, but held. They pushed off. The current was sluggish, the oar more a plank than a paddle, but Dane guided them across with surprising ease. Trees loomed on both sides, casting reflections that shimmered with each ripple. For a while, neither of them spoke. Catherine finally broke the silence. "You ever think about leaving all this behind?" Dane didn't look up. "All what?" "Guns, running, people trying to kill you." He grunted. "Sure. Every time I get shot at." She turned to face him. Then why don't you? He shrugged. Because someone always pulls me back in. The raft bumped hard against the far shore. Dane secured the rope to a post and climbed up first, offering her a hand. She took it, and for a second they simply stood there, hands still touching, not speaking. Then Dane dropped his grip and scanned the tree line. Let's keep moving. They pushed deeper into the undergrowth, following the line of the river. The air grew thick again, heavier than before. Somewhere nearby, a frog croaked. Then another. Dane slowed suddenly. Hear that? Catherine froze. I don't hear anything. Exactly. No birds, no insects. He held up a hand. A faint, rhythmic beat pulsed through the trees. Metal on wood, distant and steady. Catherine whispered, "A motor." Dane nodded. Boat. Coming fast. They scrambled up the riverbank and into the trees just as the low growl of an engine grew louder. Through the brush, Catherine glimpsed a dark vessel, a long, flat-bottomed boat with a raised engine deck, and men perched at the bow with rifles slung across their backs. She held her breath. The boat slowed as it neared the abandoned shack on the opposite shore. A man stood on the bow, barking orders in Mandarin. Another pointed toward the water, gesturing toward the marks their raft had left in the mud. "They know we crossed," she whispered. Dane's jaw tightened. "We need to move. Fast." They turned inland, scrambling through the brush and tree roots until they broke into a clearing, a wide plateau ringed by half-buried stones and cracked columns, like the ruins from earlier, but larger. Catherine stopped short, stunned. This wasn't in the journal. Dane's eyes swept the perimeter. Your father may not have made it this far. She stepped cautiously onto the stone. Moss covered most of it, but in the center, a worn obelisk stood tilted against time. Strange carvings wound around it like vines, shapes and symbols she didn't recognize. Dane ran a hand across one. These aren't Mandarin. No, Catherine said quietly. They're older. She took out her notebook and began sketching the symbols. We need to copy this. Dane scanned the tree line again. We don't have long. She worked fast. If my father saw this, he would have known this wasn't just a waypoint. It's a warning. He turned back toward her. A warning for what? She didn't look up. To turn back. The engine roared again, closer now. Dane grabbed her elbow. Too late for that. He pulled her into the trees just as the clearing behind them echoed with a new voice. One she hadn't heard before, sharp and commanding. They ducked behind a fallen log, hearts pounding. Catherine met his eyes. We're in over our heads. Dane didn't answer right away. Then, that's usually where the treasure is. Chapter 12. They kept low and silent as the voices faded behind them. The jungle thickened quickly, the canopy growing tighter overhead, the air more still. Damp earth muffled their steps. Catherine brushed leaves from her face, half running to keep up with Dane as he navigated by instinct more than trail. No sun to guide them, just moss, stone, and the occasional broken marker jutting from the ground like forgotten teeth. After nearly an hour, they came upon a narrow stone path, barely more than 2 feet wide, winding upward along the side of a limestone bluff. Dane paused to study it. Hand chiseled. Not new. Catherine touched one of the steps, fingers trailing the worn edge. This must have led somewhere important once. It still does, he said, and started up. At the top, the bluff flattened into a shallow ridge overlooking a wide expanse of tangled forest. But the real prize was carved into the far side of the stone, an entrance. A circular arch cut directly into the rock face, rimmed with flaking gold paint. Symbols lined the outer ring, weathered but still legible. and strikingly similar to the ones on the obelisk they'd seen just hours ago. Catherine's breath caught. "We found it." Dane stepped cautiously toward the opening. Or we found what they didn't want him to find. Inside, the air changed. Cooler, dry, thick with the scent of dust and time. They lit a small torch Dane had tucked into his belt, more of a waxy stub than a proper lantern, but enough to illuminate the carved corridor ahead. The walls sloped downward, covered in faded murals. Birds, ships, a man in long robes standing before a circle of flame. Catherine studied them as they walked. "This isn't Chinese." Dane glanced back. "No?" "No. It's much older." The corridor opened into a low chamber, circular and domed, with stone benches built into the walls and a shallow pit at the center. Carvings lined the ceiling in a perfect spiral. In the middle of the pit lay a bronze disc, half covered in grime. Catherine stepped toward it. Dane grabbed her wrist. "Wait." She froze. He knelt beside the pit and brushed aside a layer of dust. The edges were lined with notches, too regular to be decoration. "Pressure plate," he muttered, "and not a friendly one." He dug into his coat and produced a small metal probe, tapping the stone gently along the edge. Catherine whispered, "You carry tools for this?" "I carry tools for everything," he smiled. She watched as he wedged a pebble under the outermost notch, then pressed lightly on the far side. The mechanism clicked, once, twice, then stopped. "Dead," he said. "Or jammed." She exhaled. "That's supposed to be reassuring?" "Let's call it a gamble." They lifted the disc together. Beneath it, nestled in a concave space lined with dried straw, was a single scroll tube, ivory capped in bronze, etched with the same spiral symbols they'd seen above. Dane reached for it, then paused. "This feels too easy." Catherine arched a brow. "You've got a warped idea of easy." She didn't wait. Catherine leaned in and lifted the scroll from its resting place with careful hands. The surface felt warm, impossibly smooth. Not ivory after all. Jade, aged to a milky translucence. She turned it slowly, heart thudding. "This isn't Chinese craftsmanship," she murmured. "It's..." Voices, muffled, close. Dane moved instantly, dousing the torch. Darkness swallowed them. Catherine gripped his arm as footsteps echoed from the corridor. Mandarin again. 2 men. Flashlights. Their beams swept the chamber's edge. She and Dane pressed flat against the wall, far behind a carved column, half hidden by shadow. One flashlight beam passed within inches of her face. Then a third voice joined the first two. Lower, clipped, unmistakably educated. "Search the alcoves," it ordered in English. Dane's hand tightened on her arm. Catherine turned slightly, just enough to see the man entering the chamber. Tall, impeccably dressed. A Western-style linen jacket over travel-stained trousers. He moved like he owned the place. Catherine's breath caught. The man wore a ring. Gold. Heavy. Etched with the head of a dragon. Catherine looked at Dane, who nodded. It was the same ring the man in the gray coat had worn. One of the guards called out in Mandarin. The man in the linen jacket turned, barked something back, and began to walk toward the pit. Catherine pulled Dane back. "We have to go. Now." He nodded, already moving. They slipped out through a second tunnel, narrow, unfinished, likely dug after the main structure was built. Catherine clutched the scroll tight as they climbed into the dark, every breath laced with adrenaline and the sour scent of old stone. Behind them, the chamber echoed with a single command. "Find them!" In the depths of an ancient chamber, with the scroll finally in her hands, Catherine's journey edges closer to the truth. But the appearance of a familiar symbol, a ring worn by more than one enemy, suggests they're not just being followed, they're being hunted. And whatever her father uncovered, it didn't belong to him alone. To be continued in Part 4 of Beneath the Jade Sea.